healing gaze of Brazzo. Holy smokes, is that The Rock? The people's champion himself is here? Oh, Mr. Rock, sir. Who's in that window? Who's in there? Who could it be that's in that window? You interrupted me watching Troll 2. I ain't stopping you, man. I'm the bee sneeze. Thanks. You can disagree with me on voting, you can disagree with me on Ukraine, but sir, when you disparage the shoestring fry, you've gone too far. Damn. Well, I hate to tell you. I guess another one of my controversial opinions. You could keep the shoestring fries, bro. Like I don't even want them. Like usually the only time I get them is when I order something and it says fries, and I don't know that that's a place that like gives you shoestrings. They're gross. Number one, I don't even know why they're called shoestring fries. They're not the same size or width as a shoestring. They're not long like a shoestring. It's one of those things that I think is just deliberately designed to make it hard for foreigners to learn English. A shoestring fry are these tiny, skinny little fries, like the skinniest fry you could get. And usually, they're when you deep fry a fry that's that thin, all the like potato-y, fluffy stuff on the inside of the fry just gets like boiled away, and you end up with just like this crispy husk. It's horrible. I hate shoestring fries. They're gross. There's a fast food joint that does them. Which one is it? Is it? I can't remember. Shake Shack, maybe? What's your opinion on raisins and apple pie? Honestly, I've never had it. Or if I have, I didn't know there were raisins in it. Steak and Shake, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I went there one time because it was pretty gross when I was living in Ohio for a few months. I ended up going with the guys to a Steak and Shake, and I had no clue. It just, burger and fries. I was like, cool, I'll take the combo meal. I was like, what the fuck is this? Shoestring fries. Ohio, please. Ohio, what the fuck? What are you doing to me? Does Culver's also do the shoestring fry? I've never been to a Culver's, I don't think. Yeah, well, TJ doesn't like crinkle cut fries or waffle fries. Which, I'm like, huh? I mean, yeah, they're not my favorite, but like both viable types of fry. And crinkle cut, that's just like nostalgia. Anytime you get a crinkle cut fry, it makes you feel like you're 3 again, You're 5 years old. Mom just put a corn dog and a handful of crinkle cut fries on your plate with some ketchup for dinner. Just take you straight back to the ghetto. Straight back. Thoughts on tots? I love tots. Hey, Napoleon, give me some of your tots. No, get your own freaking tots. There are two types of people in this world, I find. People that love Napoleon Dynamite and morons. I mean, that's just, it's a hard and fast rule. Hey, Napoleon. No way those tots were still that crispy in Napoleon's pocket. Yeah, I know. They would have got sweaty pretty quick. No, I'm not a big fan of either of their other movies. But, Napoleon Dynamite. That's just... It's just the right combination of awkward, nostalgic, and scary. A lot of people don't do. There's lots of like horror elements in Napoleon Dynamite. It's just a great movie, and I love that it's so divisive. Like I love that there are people who are just like they're not dialed into that weird kind of why is it scary? Like you remember when like the old guy blows the cow's head off or whatever? There's that scene. There's like mostly it's the old farmer guy that adds a sense of like spookiness. Like there's the whole scene where Napoleon works at the chicken place. Not the creepy uncle, like the next door neighbor. There's like a weird next door neighbor. He's got like facial palsy. And there's a scene like right towards the beginning of the movie where like the bus is waiting to go and he just like slaughters a cow in front of all the kids. Yeah, they have like the milk contest where they're cracking like raw eggs into milk and stirring it up for lunch. And that dude is just kind of looming in the background of it. I mean, it's not like a horror film, but it's definitely got like horror elements to it for sure. So gross. That's happened somewhere in this point in the country. A bus full of kids have seen an old man brain a cow. Probably. I would guess it's happened at some point. Yeah, good movie. Unfortunate movie for the guy that plays Napoleon, John Heder or whatever his name is, because like he's been in a couple other movies. I don't remember the names of them, and I can't watch them because it's so weird watching Napoleon Dynamite act differently. A lot of characters give off weird blank stares throughout the movie too. Oh yeah, like there's a weird communication barrier in that movie that's strange. Watching that movie in the theater with no idea what I was getting into was amazing. Yeah. Were you gonna say people aren't dialed in in regards to Napoleon? Oh, just like that type of sense of humor, like the sense of humor that's not necessarily like it's like the right amount of the lol so random with a heaping helping of like dry, awkward humor and anti-humor. There are people that like I've known people that are just so cold on Napoleon Dynamite because it doesn't interest them at all. Like it doesn't make them laugh. It makes them uncomfortable in a bad way because they just are watching all these uncomfortable social interactions and stuff. So it really rubs a segment of the population the wrong way, I think. But that's one of the reasons why I love the movie. Like I feel like it was designed to exclude a certain amount of people, which is weird. Like, it's a weird thing because when you make a movie that overtly is like that, like, this is going to be repellent to about 30% of our audience. Like, when you release a movie like that, what you're banking on is like, this is going to be a cult classic. Like, probably not going to be a smash hit, but even if it is, it's going to end up being more of a cult classic. I thought Napoleon was like super bad, lose my virginity movie. No, it really doesn't have anything like that. Like, there's really not a whole lot of sexual concern, and I guess it's not like a sexless movie, but it's definitely like a main plot point is like not somebody trying to lose their virginity. In my opinion, I don't know. Maybe you could make a case for it, but what is your opinion on? Oh yeah, you asked me already. The reason I was just checking the super chat. The humor of that movie doesn't seem to hold up for whatever reason. Maybe it was memed today. I mean, it really was memed, but I didn't take part enough in that circle jerk for it to have ruined the movie for me. It's still a lot of fun to watch. So it holds up just fine for me. It's one of those like weird timeless movies because yeah, somebody said earlier like a lot of people assume it takes place in the 80s. Well, maybe it does. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe the people that are involved in it are just anachronistically 80s like. So maybe it's supposed to be a modern. It's a timeless type of movie. It's meant to hold up, I think. The humor of that movie, yeah. It's a cynical coming of age esque thing. I guess so. I hope they don't remake it with Pete Davidson or something. I don't really think that one's, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll be proved wrong, but I don't really think that one's in danger of getting remade. Like, it would immediately be ill received, I think. Like, the people that are still into it don't want a new Napoleon Dynamite, and the people that aren't into it are still not into it. So it doesn't really. I feel like it's not in the remake zone. You want to vote for Pedro shirt? Just make one. Like, that was the cool thing about the vote for Pedro shirt is like it was just those iron-on letters or whatever. Just go make one. Don't like pay some exorbitant price from some t-shirt shop for a vote for Pedro shirt. That's just defeating the purpose. Caught me a delicious bass. Thank you. I spent like 4 hours on the shading on your upper lip. Giuliani episode yet? Is he dead? If not, then no. Is he dead or in jail? No. I think I could throw a football over the mountains. Yeah, I bet I could. I bet I could. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't dress up for Halloween. I haven't since I was like 13 years old. I never really got the like adults still dressing up thing. Like, I would show up to Halloween parties and be one of the only people not dressed up. I don't care. It's just like, do you want to be uncomfortable all night? No thanks. No thanks. I'll leave that up to the people that want to do it. I got no problem with other people doing it. I just don't. Yeah, I'm naked from the waist down right now. That's how committed to comfort I am. Mr. Comfort. The twig and two berries, man. Just dangling. Flopping free. When people ask what I'm being for Halloween, I usually say, like, a fat hippie stoner. That's what I go as every day. Flopping. I mean, come on. I got a little bit of a flop, I'm capable of, like, minor flop. Speaking of twigs and berries, Boogie made an OnlyFans. Oh, no. Bruh. People will join it, too. Like, I don't blame him. It's guaranteed money, but, oof. Got a 10-inch flop. Sure you do, bud. Sure you do. With, like, a fucking fresh kielbasa stuff down your pants, you do. Well, whatever, Who's judging? Who's judging you? I'm so ashamed that Boogie is from my town. Well, don't be. There's at least 10 in every town. So. Like, I got recommended a Boogie video the other day, and he was basically e-begging. Which, whatever. Like, I understand. E-begging has become, a job. But he was doing it, like, and admitting that, like, oh, the reason I need to e-beg right now is because I used to be rich, but I spent all the money on crypto and lost it. I was just like, I'd leave that part out, man. Like, that does not give me more money so I can make bad decisions with it. It's like, it'd be one thing if it was just like going to his living expenses or whatever, but in the video, he's just talking about, like, how he bought a lot of stupid shit and bought a bunch of crypto. I was just like, that's not how you do it, Boogie. That's not how you do it. Did you give Boogie a small donation? No. No, never. No. Never have I ever. And never will I ever. Boogie, dude. Goddamn. I'll still never forget how he looked brandishing that gun. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Boogie stepping out on his porch, holding the gun like this with two hands and, like, resting on the top of his belly. Don't make me do it, man. And he's just like literally round as a ball. It's, once seen, it cannot be unseen. That's your computer wallpaper. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Classic, yes. It was crazy. He's brandishing a gun on OnlyFans. Oh, really? You're a member, huh? You signed up for the Boogie OnlyFans, didn't you, you degenerate bastard? You sick freak. How dare you? How dare you admit such a thing openly? Yeah, dude, those sparkly white, square, like chiclets teeth. That's one of the things I never understand. It's like, I think people get in this mindset like, oh, I'm getting a bunch of teeth work done. I'm getting a bunch of caps put on. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I don't got a problem with him getting that done. It's just like, why does everybody that get that done go like, give me maximum white teeth? Like the whitest that you can give me. May as well, right? It's like, no. Why don't you go ahead and like make them look natural? Give them a little yellow. Dinge them up. Just make them a little dingy. Make them look like teeth that have been used. Please, thank you. He did have them changed to a more stained version. I mean, that's good. I haven't seen Boogie in a while, but I remember for a while there he was blinding fools. Hey everybody, it's Boogie 298. Just like, looking like a Max Headroom. Looking like the Mask, dude. Smoking. Looking like fucking the Mask, bro. How are you gonna do that, man? Boogie's teeth look so bad like plastic. I mean, come on. Don't be mean. They look better than they did when he was all snaggled up, you know? Like, I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about, like, the way they stick out because they're just so, at least they used to be, so unnaturally white. It's crazy fucking perma white. Like a unicorn's ass, you know what I mean? Ding! I don't like that. A lot of celebrities do that shit, too. They've got that, like, extra white smile, and it's just like... makes you look like it makes you look like some kind of weird cyborg or animatronic or something. They just couldn't quite get the teeth right, you know. What are we talking about? What are we doing? What's going on? Huh? One of my fave DFFs is the one where you watch him do the Draw My Life and it's all just woe is me. Bro, the craziest video I ever saw from Boogie, the craziest for me, was the one where he had somebody film him visiting his mother's gravesite and having this odd conversation with her grave. It's just like, dude, I understand. Like, people do that. People will go and visit like a family member's grave and have like a talk with them, but you don't film it. You know, and he wasn't even filming it like selfie style. He had somebody come with him to like rotate around and get different shots and get moving shots of him sitting there. It just like, it did, dude. It felt like something that was like wholly alien trying to evoke sympathy in a way that it thinks that humans want to be perceived. It was 100% odd. I would find complaining about my problems to the internet very embarrassing. I don't know how people do it, honestly, besides money. I mean, I don't know how it works. I mean, it's one thing to go like, yeah, I'm having some financial difficulties or whatever. And it's another thing to like, woe is me, and make that like the whole drumbeat of your shit. It's like, who's like that? Dark Side Phil, dude. You guys know who Dark Side Phil is? Dude, that guy is crazy. He's also known as the only streamer, I think, in the history of streaming that's accidentally got caught beating off. Like, I don't even know how that happens, man. That to me is almost unthinkable. That he accidentally jerked it on stream. But that's like the least sad and ridiculous thing about him. His whole life is like guilt tripping his fan base, basically. Like that's his whole thing. Accidentally. Oh, you think that he did it on purpose? See, I don't think, like, maybe if he was like a smarter person, but he's not. Like, that's giving him too much credit for him to go like, oh, this is going to be like, no publicity is bad publicity. I'd have to leave the internet completely. Oh, thanks, Oits. Good evening to you. Yeah, he's not. This was an actual accident. Like, he sat down and was like, all right, well, I got a stream here in about 10 minutes. Let's rub one out real quick. And somehow, like, hit a keybind for starting his stream and sat there. We get the waist up, jerk off, the O face and everything. And then he finishes up and he goes to start the stream. And like, there's a lot of questions surrounding that too, because I don't know what did he do with the nut? Like, where did the nut go? Like, that's the big question that I have, because he goes straight from like that to starting the stream, and then he's like, oh, camera was on that whole time, huh? It's just like, oh God. At that point, I just delete everything from the internet. I immediately start the process of changing my name, change my whole look. I might even consider getting some plastic surgery or something. You got to go from scratch at that point. But he didn't, dude. It was like 8 years ago he did that, and he's still around, still doing his thing.
It's kind of the same as like TJ in the banana video. You just gotta push
yeah,
through.
But that's different though. It's like TJ with the banana video. It's like, yeah, it's embarrassing, but it's just like he's like doing he's having sex with somebody basically. Mm-hmm. Like, it was something that wasn't meant to get out that got leaked. Mm-hmm. This was like he did it. Like, he sat down and just hit start stream accidentally, and leaked it in a real time. That's totally different. It would be like TJ, like, right before a stream deciding he was going to put a banana in his ass and accidentally turned on the cam and just put a banana in his ass as the opener to his stream. That doesn't compute. Yeah, TJ, yeah, he wasn't involved in that. That was it was a betrayal of trust. Somebody that he trusted, released some private shit. That's different. Still embarrassing, but way different. I never watched that video, mainly because it was leaked without consent. Well, good for you. I watched it. I watched it back in the day.
Do you watch the second one?
Yes, the hot oil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the hot oil as well. I've seen the boiling oil, and I've seen the nanner. I'd love to act like I've got a conscience or whatever that would prohibit me from doing that, because it was non-consent. I just watched. I immediately went looking. Mostly, like, honestly, just to confirm.
Yeah.
I thought, like, man, people are trolling or whatever. There's no way. There is a way.
It's like that sex tape, the first sex tape that leaked. Everyone had to see it.
Which one?
The big one.
Oh, yeah, Pamela and Tommy Lee or whatever, yeah. Although I think it's way up in the air whether that one was non-consensual or whatever. The story doesn't make any sense. I think they leaked it and profited off of it or whatever. Oh yeah, no. I mean, TJ, like, there's only really one route to handling something like that properly, and he did it perfectly. Like, you can't come on and be emotional. You can't be mad. You've kind of just got to be like, well, that was embarrassing, but yeah, I did it. I did it, and I'm gonna do it again too.
Didn't hurt no one with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not hurting anybody with it, so sorry that you had to see that or whatever, but hey, it happened. Yeah, I think that's a maneuver for these like C-list celebrities when their star starts to wane a little bit. I think like they probably get approached by companies. They're like, let us release it, make a sex tape and we'll release it. I mean, there's no denying it gets them in like front page news for 3 or 4 days, especially if they're strategic about when they release it.
Mm-hmm. Like, well, the Pamela, that was like months.
Well, yeah, because it was, Pamela Anderson was like one of the most popular. It would be like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of who it would be like. Like,
Megan Fox isn't there anymore.
No, like Billie Eilish or something. Yeah. I don't know who's like a popular female pop thing right now. I don't really stay up to date, but it would be crazy. Margot Robbie, yeah. Just somebody that's like insanely famous having sex with another person that's insanely famous. Yeah, like Taylor Swift. It would be like if Taylor Swift boned Drake or something, and a Taylor Swift-Drake sex tape got dropped. Like, the world would literally come to a screeching halt. And you would hear nothing about anything else for at least 3 or 4 months. I always wanted to watch that movie with Pam in it called Barbed Wire, but your mom wouldn't let you. She was right to not let you. And not because it's like, she saved you from watching just a totally shitty movie. So, maybe for the wrong reasons, but you should thank her for that. Because, yeah, she saved you a lot of disappointment. That movie was real bad. You don't ask your mom for J.O. material. I know. That is a bad look. You're supposed to sneak and rent that one like when nobody's paying attention. Not ask your mom, can I rent it? You gotta be sneaky about this stuff. If you think that you're like, eventually you have to give it to your mom because she's got to buy it. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Naughty Priest, by the way. Good man's a good man.
You gotta find the friend that has the cool uncle.
Either that, or you just get it. You find one that has a name that's not overtly sexual. Mm-hmm. You take, because like back in the day, you didn't grab the movie box with the picture on it. You grabbed like a taped box with Blockbuster on it, and all it said was the title. And when she asked you about it, you just say, oh, it's like an action movie. It's got Schwarzenegger in it or whatever. Oh, okay. And then you've got it, You don't like point at the box with Pamela Anderson giant fake tits on it and go like, I want that. You're not getting it. First movie Bobas I saw was Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I don't know when my first pair of movie titties was.
A lot of earlier horror movies had them come out.
That's probably why I don't remember. Yeah. Because I saw them very early.
Yeah.
So, I don't really have many clear memories from when I was like 5, 6. And I probably, right around that age, because that's, I parents just had a bunch of movies, and I'd pop them in. They didn't really care. Like that, there wasn't this like oppressive sense that like they had to shield me from. Like there was only one time in my childhood that I remember my parents, or it was just my mom too. My dad didn't give a shit, getting all worked up about something. There was a cartoon that came out in the '80s called Dungeons and Dragons, and it was like based loosely on Dungeons and Dragons. It was about some kids that played the game, and then like they found a magical dice or something that took them into the real fantasy world, and they had to fight bad guys or whatever. And it was like the Satanic Panic basically, that started in like the mid to late '80s and went all the way through the '90s. Like it was just a bunch of shit in the news, like, oh, should your kids watch this? And I was just like, I was banned from watching that one cartoon, and I didn't even really want to watch it. Like it didn't look all that interesting to me. Like
Think of how many satanic horror movies that she let you watch.
Oh my
god,
yeah, dude. Go ahead and watch Pumpkinhead, honey. That movie where an old witch woman that lives in the swamp uses the blood from a dead little boy's body to resurrect a demon of vengeance. Yeah, go watch that. You can't watch Dungeons and Dragons, though. What?
At least she didn't put you through Sunday school any longer than you wanted to.
Yeah, that was cool. I mean, like, I think they tried it with me and my sister. So I remember she used to go with me too. They tried it just as like a convenient like babysitting thing to fill the gaps when they were working and stuff. But like I remember as soon as I told her like I don't want to go back there, she never pushed me. She was just like, okay, we won't. So that was nice. That's better than a lot of kids get.
That's where I remember them telling like Harry Potter's satanic.
I just didn't get it.
Yeah.
Like I have a couple of clear memories from Sunday school. One of them is this weird poster that they had, where it was like if you can picture, like it was a cartoon drawing but kind of lifelike of a woman, and she had her hair, and it was like it was like something like this is what sin is. And on the left, it was just, she was sitting there, she had her hair, and she was just looking out. And then right next to her was the same picture, but with no hair. And on her scalp, there were all kinds of cockroaches and bugs and spiders and shit. Like, it was like, sin sticks to your mind or whatever. And like this, it's creepy and gross to have sin or whatever. And I remember being like terrified of that poster. I was like, what the fuck? I don't want to go back there, man. And the other one was, I got in trouble because I asked a question that to this day Christians don't want to ask. They were talking about Jesus in the Sunday school, and they had a picture of him, like one of those paintings of Jesus, and I remember asking him, I was like, Jesus, lived before there were cameras. They're like, yeah, he did. And how do we know that that's what, like was this picture painted by somebody who knew Jesus? Well, no, it was painted hundreds of years later. It's like, well, how do we know that's what Jesus looked like then? Why does he always look the same, but we don't know? And I remember when my mom came to pick me up, the lady put me in timeout for being sacrilegious. And then when my mom came to pick me up, she wanted to lecture my mom about all the questions I was asking. And my mom was like, this was a different Sunday school. I went to 2 different ones. That was the first one. And she was like, no, shut up. He can ask questions. We won't be back. She put me in another Sunday school. Whoops, sorry. Didn't mean to dismantle your religious assumptions accidentally as a 6-year-old kid. I went to Sunday school where I got in trouble for using the phrase, oh my God. Oh yeah. my friend Waylon, his parents, they weren't religious, but they were strict. And they had a very like religious style, like he couldn't cuss at all, like no damn, no hell, um, no taking the Lord's name in vain. You couldn't even say the word fart. Like I remember one time I got sent home, like I was supposed to spend the night at his house, and I loved spending the night at his house because he had a ton of games. Like his mom was crazy. She would go to like Costco, and there's these, back in the day there were like these bins of used video games, and she would just like buy, because they were like, $3 a piece or something at Costco, and she'd bring home like a stack of video games for him. So he had tons. And I remember one time I was playing a video game there, and one of his dogs came and like was sitting next to us and farted, and I was like, ugh, that dog farted. And like my mom was called. I was sent home.
You weren't even being a little shithead about it. You were just stating facts.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, the dog farted. And it was overheard from the other room, and my mom was called to come pick me up. And I was chastised for having a dirty mouth or whatever. I was like... It's funny because in our teens, that same mom that was that strict, like we would get wasted with her. She loved like drinking with us. She went off the deep end a little bit, I think. She had a great time drinking with us when we were in her teens. She was hella strict before that, though. Was the dog sent home, too? I mean, that would be fair. Well, the dog was home. Dog can fart, you just can't point it out. I don't make the rules,
Do you have any like parents that did the birthday spanking?
Oh, my parents did it.
Yeah.
Like all the way through my all the way through my teen years, it was like a big ritual.
Yeah.
Everybody would line up.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't just one person. Mm-hmm. Like everybody would line up, and you'd bend over, and they'd 1, 2. They just go in a line.
I remember seeing it the first time at like a friend's house, and I was like, I don't want to spank her butt.
Yeah, if you didn't grow up with it, I could see how it'd be weird, but to me, it was totally normal. There's a lot about my childhood, though, quite honestly, that's like that. Like, a lot of things that were very normal in my household were very abnormal in general. Like, I was exposed to a lot of drinking and partying and shit, and I just thought, like, yeah, that's what everybody's doing. On the weekends or weekday nights or whatever, their parents have 5 or 6 people over, and there's cussing and smoking and drinking. And, like, that's not how any of my other friends grew up. I didn't find that out until I was a little older, that my whole childhood was quite strange. Saw my Uncle Jimmy do a striptease at 5 years old for my mom's, like, I don't know what it was. I think it was her 30th birthday or some shit. 35th birthday. She had an over-the-hill party. So my Uncle Stinkworm, man. Saw him do like a male Chippendale stripper routine, and he didn't have the body to, you know what I mean? It was a joke. But yeah. That, nothing like that ever happened to any of my friends at home. That's for sure. Yeah, beware the giant worm. Was it hot? No, it was I mean, I was just like, I was like 8, or 7. I was pretty young. Like at max, I was 7. Trying to think of some other things. Just the amount of like parties and stuff. Like it was not uncommon for me to wake up like on a Saturday morning, and there would be like 3 or 4 adults just like passed out on the floor in our living room because they partied all night, sleeping it off. Every couch taken up, You ever see adults vomit from over drinking? I remember being scared the first time I saw that. I don't remember seeing that a whole lot. Like, I wasn't like,
I think they were seasoned enough
yeah,
to not just puke on the floor.
yeah. The people that like my parents had over and stuff. I mean, maybe it happened. I don't remember it happening. They've been drinking for a long time. You know, they were pretty professional about their drinking. So yeah, I don't remember that. And that's not to say they didn't get too drunk. You know what I saw way more often than vomiting that used to bother me was people would cry. You get to a certain point when you're drunk and you just get all sentimental and you want to cry. And I would just see like, and I thought of these people too, and because they were presented this way to me as my aunts and uncles. Like all my mom's friends from work, they were Uncle, Joe and Aunt Beatrice or whatever the fuck, And I would see one of them like over in the corner with 2 or 3 people around them bawling. Mm-hmm. And I would be like, "Oh, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong." How do you explain to a kid like, this is just a stage of drunkenness. So, yeah, that was all pretty par for the course. You're drunk right now. Good for you, buddy. Way to go. Way to achieve drunkenness.
I guess it was weird, too, that your mom let you just drink at home.
I guess that was way more common. Yeah. Like even the stricter parents had there was just a different thought process back then. It was like I would rather them be doing it in a place where I know where they're at than sneaking around and doing it, because like my mom's thing was, especially after all of us started getting learner's permits and driver's licenses and shit, like she would collect the keys and hide them. She'd be like, "Look, if you're drinking, you're staying. You're not. Your car keys are with me until tomorrow morning." And that was, I think she was right. Maybe not right about like letting us do it, but right that it was safer to do it that way than it would have been for us to be at somebody's house where their parents are out of town.
Yeah.
And,
or in the park or whatever the fuck.
And so my house was really the only house we got to go to, but like my mom wouldn't sneak. Like the parents knew. And sanctioned it.
Yeah, well, they had to know, otherwise they'd be like, "Why isn't my kid home?"
Well, yeah, I mean, we could have just they could have just said like, "Oh, they're going to spend the night or whatever, play video games." But if we were drinking, my mom would tell the people's parents like, "Look, they're probably going to have some beers," and it was not an uncommon sentiment back then that it's better that kids are doing it at home than out and about. But I don't know whether that's good, bad, right, or wrong, to be honest with you. Because I will tell you this: if my parents had been like strict about you can't drink, I would have been out drinking a lot more than I did it anyway, but a lot more than I was. They weren't going to stop me from doing it. So it's just one of those things. It's one of my mom's policy when I was a teenager was smoking weed. She didn't like it, but she always said I'd rather have her doing it here than sneaking out. Yeah, I was not allowed to smoke weed. Which is funny because weed is way less destructive than alcohol is. I was allowed to drink like a absolute fish.
Well, weed, I think, is just more of a liability more than anything.
Especially back then, yeah. This was before like California decriminalized weed, so you could still cop yourself 10 years for a bag of weed. Maybe not 10 years, but you get my drift. My dad let me smoke in the house. No, I was definitely not allowed to smoke. I could drink till the day was done and then drink some more. Parents would join in. Pretty crazy. Pretty strange. But I didn't find out it was strange till I was in my teens. Underage drinking in general, back when I was a kid, was not seen as big of a taboo as it is now, just in general. Like that, the parents letting you party at their house was just one example of that. It was like we had several places around town where if we didn't want to be cooped up in a house or something, we would all get together and drink publicly, and it was well known. It wasn't like these were like secret spots or whatever. Everybody in town knew what was going on, and there was very little enforcement ever trying to stop us. Like I remember we used to get drunk in the park a lot, and there was this dip in the park where you couldn't really see at the bottom of the dip from the street. And the only time that we ever got hassled by the cops there was if we were too loud in the middle of the night and people that lived adjacent to the park could hear us. As long as we were reasonably quiet, nobody cared. We used to start bonfires under an overpass bridge, like in full view of the street, and sit there and drink.
I think it makes a little bit more sense because they didn't raise it to 21 until 1984.
Yeah, it was 18 before then.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was probably still strange. It was,
yeah.
My parents came from the whole like you can drink when you're 18 generation.
So like that 16 doesn't seem like that big of a stretch then, but
it was just normalized. It was seen as like this is what kids do. Not all kids. There were kids that were like teetotalers or their parents were super strict or whatever, but it was not seen as abnormal for kids to smoke cigarettes and drink. That was just kind of like, oh, that's what kids do. Didn't have cell phones to dial 911 right away either. Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it was probably way more dangerous back then just because, you didn't have instant access to a phone. But it just wasn't looked at as a problem. At least by most people. There were definitely, like I said, kids who had parents that were way stricter and stuff, but none of the kids I knew. None of the kids I chilled with. America has one of the highest drinking ages in the entire world. In most places it's 16 to 18. Yeah, true.
They also have way more drivers.
That is true as well.
It's like if you're fucking drunk at 16 in Europe, you can just flop onto a train and get home.
Yeah, at least you're not driving the train. Here in America, though, you have no choice. There's literally no public transit in a lot of places, so. You're born in 94. I feel like my generation was just young enough to still remember life before the internet. The internet was in full swing by 94. Maybe not full swing, but it was totally available by 94.
It's just, I think parents didn't let their kids fuck around on their computers as much at that point.
It was the opposite for me. My parents literally knew nothing. Like, well, my dad did, but he didn't care. My mom knew nothing about computers. And so, like, once I got to, like, age 14, which would have been in 1994, like, I was on the internet, all hours of the night, as often as I could be. But yeah, the internet didn't become, like, ubiquitous, like, everybody's got an internet connection until, like, after 2001, 2002. That's when it really, like, people started, like, everybody had AOL or everybody had this or that. Yeah, a lot of people didn't. A lot of people didn't get a computer in their house at all until the very early 2000s. And then it started to become ubiquitous. Laptops came out. parents, the media started to pick up on it, corporations started to pick up on it. People started to see the value of it. But yeah, it was around for years before that. It was a very cool time. It was like a hobbyist thing. I got to play some of the very first, I got to play the very first multiplayer games where you didn't have to be sitting next to somebody with a controller. You could play with somebody halfway across the country or whatever. Played all those first kind of multiplayer things. Yeah, there was no computer lab or there were a couple of Apple IIe type computers, but it was rare. There was only a few sprinkled around campus, and I only really started seeing them when I got into the 6th grade. I got into the 6th grade, and there was a 6th grade teacher. He actually wasn't my teacher, but he was one of the 6th grade teachers who was all into computers, and he spearheaded a plan to get 5 or 6 Apple IIes for the upper grades, and they'd put one in your class, but we all we did was play Oregon Trail on it. That was it. I don't remember really doing it. They weren't really functional for anything else. Oh yeah. I know I used to have to take care of those fucking stupid MacBook cards. Those things are nightmares.
I did end up playing Oregon Trail on an Apple, one of those bright colored ones when they were pink green or whatever. They had a couple of those when I was in elementary school, so I did play Oregon Trail on it.
Yep.
But they got rid of them right after that.
It's funny how Oregon Trail is. I think it's still a staple. I think kids still can play it and kind of know what it is, and it's just weird. But yeah, that was the first thing at school. In high school, I remember there was one in the drama room. It was the only one on campus as far as I knew. And we had this program called HyperCard, where you could basically make a little choose your own adventure game. You could draw a picture and then designate an area of that picture to be something that somebody could click on, and if they clicked on it, it would take you to another picture. And you would have this whole deck of HyperCards that were all linked together, and so you could create these choose your own adventure games. And we used to do that a lot. I remember in high school, just fuck around with it. But there was no I didn't have a typing a computer typing class. In fact, typing at that point was seen as totally optional. My mom went to school, you had to take typing. But at that point, typing was seen as completely optional. There was no computer lab that you could go to. There was no computer class. It was all just, I think the AV team or whatever had a computer that they used for certain things. The people that did every month they would do a little school video update or whatever about what's coming up in the month. But yeah, it just wasn't a thing.
I guess I figured computer keyboards are at least faster than typewriters, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Did you ever read the Goosebumps books? I was a little too old for Goosebumps. It came out when I was a kid, but I was probably already 15 or something. It was not the age range of Goosebumps anymore. Well, yeah, now you have to take typing. I was just in this weird little lull where it was jobs that required typing were less popular, and the idea of using a typewriter or whatever to type things was completely outdated. Computers hadn't caught on yet, and so it just wasn't seen as an important skill for people to have. You could take there were typing classes. It was just not mandatory. I never took one. I still type like this to this day. I'm a hunt and peck typist. I'm relatively fast, but
you're also hella loud when you type too. I can
ding.
You can always tell when you're on a roll in there.
Yep. Too old for Pokemon, yeah. Like Pokemon came out when what year? Like 96? I was 16. Yeah, I was a little out of the age range of Pokemon. So yeah, I missed that.
I think that one kind of slipped into the Satanic Panic too.
Oh yeah, because people were like, oh, you're summoning these little demons or whatever, summoning these creatures from another realm or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, some of them have horns like the devil, and they cast magic spells at each other. Yeah. Dude, I think it's so funny how many, and like not all of them do, but so many of these like ideologies have become like, back in my day. I'm truly an old man now. Back in my day, we didn't have no fiddly internet connections. Oh yeah, and they evolve too. Ugh. Being old is weird. It is. Well, like this part of being old is weird. Like it doesn't feel like I've been alive for a super long time, but I feel like the world was way different when I was a kid, and that's an odd feeling. I think there's probably a lot of people that some things will change, but things remain relatively the same from when you were a kid. But like I just happen to be born at a time of like huge technological acceleration, and so there's shit like it still blows my mind now when I'm sitting around playing my Steam Deck that like number one that I could even play a game that looks like this because graphics have gotten so crazy, but like that it can fit in a thing in my hand.
It freaked me out just how light it was when I picked it up.
Yeah, I mean, they're just like things are getting thinner and smaller, and like computing is becoming more and more compact, and like that's just crazy to me. Steam Deck, aren't those busted? No, it's great, man. I haven't heard anybody say anything bad about Steam Deck. Like it's really good.
Yeah, like maybe in like the early days when they didn't have a lot of compatible games, it might have been a little shitty, but
maybe. But I mean, like I don't know. I wouldn't recommend it if you don't have a lot of games on Steam, but I do. And so I've got like hundreds and hundreds of games that are compatible on it. They all run flawlessly on it. Yeah, I can play Sekiro on it. I play Red Dead Redemption 2 on it. Red Dead 2 runs flawlessly on it. Playing Persona 5 on it looks great. It's just like awe-inspiring to me that like if you would have shown me that fucking thing when I was like 16, I would have crapped my pants. Yeah, I have a Steam Deck. I pre-ordered one right when they first opened it. Open it for pre-orders.
yeah, you just got put in like one of the later cohorts or whatever.
I mean, yeah, everybody started getting them, and they just started going like. But it took. I think I had it pre-ordered for like 8 or 9 months. I think it's worth it to prepare for the future and save money. The future seems pretty bleak. I mean, it'll be even more bleak if you're broke. So like, even if you end up saving money and the world ends or whatever, I mean, I don't know. It's up to you. Chances are the world's not going to end in the way that you think. It's not going to be some sudden thing, and you're going to need some money. So
yeah, we're doomed to a slow decline.
Yeah, I think I've talked about this before, but I think that like subconsciously and for some of us consciously, people want some big precipitating event to happen. Like they just feel like things aren't right, And I think it's very confusing for most people to look at it because it's not just one problem. It's this insane web of problems, all of them with seemingly no solution. And I think that people think like, you know what, we need a big reset.
We need a zombie apocalypse. We need a nuclear war or whatever.
A meteor.
Yeah.
You know, a fucking super volcano, something that happens, you know, and in 2 or 3 months max, the human species is at like 10% or some shit. Some big giant plague or whatever. Like, I think that there's, I honestly think if you talk to people, a lot of people wouldn't admit it, but I think subconsciously there's kind of like, I think that that's the reason why those types of movies and that type of media is so insanely popular, is because it's tapping into this kind of nascent desire that everybody in our culture has, the death urge, as Derek Jensen calls it. But yeah, none of them want like the slow decline. I think that's another thing too, is that that's what they see. 10 years from now it's going to be worse, and then 10 years from then it's going to be worse.
But it's still going to be recognizable.
Yeah. 2023 Great War, you think so? I think that's the year, huh? I wouldn't be shocked.
My nose is froze.
Yeah. Dino is too. I love this grinder. It's the greatest grinder ever. No grinder is superior to my grinder. Yeah, I had a crank grinder for a while. I liked it a lot, but this is like the nicest grinder I've ever had. Like, I don't think this grinder will ever need to be replaced. I think this is my last grinder. It's made of shit heavy material. It's got magnets at the different stages. Smoother than shit to grind things. It's not like a hassle. It doesn't get gummed up. There's nothing to get gummed up on it. It's not designed that way. Yeah, just like save up your money and get a decent grinder. Those plastic things are for the birds. Only get those if you're like on vacation. need one like that you can just chuck. Grind it with your teeth. Gross. That's gross. You're gross. So, what else is going on in the world, chat? We've had a back in my day stream. Now, what do you want to talk about? What's on your mind? Way of the future. Way of the future. Way of the future. Way of the future. Thoughts on RoboCop 2 and 3? 2 good, 3 bad. As soon as they recast RoboCop, it's bad news bears. What advice do you have about getting a place with your partner for the first time? None. I don't, I would need to know your specific situation, and even then I might not be the best person to ask for advice. I try and hesitate to give people advice about shit like that because I really don't know. Elon and Twitter. Talked about that a little bit yesterday, I think, but I don't care. It's a win-win for me. If Elon tanks Twitter, it's a win. If he makes it better, it's maybe that's not a win for me, but it's totally neutral. I don't care if Twitter goes away. I don't care if it stays. I don't care if it gets better. I don't care if it gets worse. I think what I kind of hope is that maybe it takes Twitter down a peg, from the super hyper inflated level of importance that the media gives it. Maybe this will be the end of that. Because the media has for years now, for a decade or more at least, treated Twitter like it's some kind of finger on the pulse of America. Finger, this is what people think. And in actuality, especially globally, it's 1 fucking 100th of people, or maybe even less. It's 1 person out of 10,000 or something is on Twitter. The vast majority of people are not on Twitter, don't care about Twitter, and it's treated oh, this is everybody's opinion. It's no. No, it really isn't. A teeny tiny little minority of America. You're right, I do have the most based anti-war takes. It's true. At a time where truly genuinely being a person that's anti-war is seen as cringe, I've got the best cringe. Because I'm, that's been my position since I had a position on the subject. He predicts Dems winning a majority in the midterms. I really don't know. I'll be honest with you. I haven't in past years, I feel like I've been way more dialed in to what's going on, like politically, at least on a base level. This cycle, I'm not paying attention. I don't care, basically. I don't give a shit one way or the other. Do you support war if we all had to do it medieval style? No. Just because it would be cooler doesn't mean that I'd support it anymore. Yeah, I'm not paying attention. If we show in Ukraine, it will just be another, it's already there. It's going to be another Afghanistan. There are people that just want to pretend like that's a complete impossibility, and those people will see. That's a sad thing. Like, a strong opinion used to come with a strong level of condemnation when you were wrong, because your opinion was only really known by a group of close people. They all knew what your opinion was. The more strongly you advocated it for, when it fell on its face, the harder you were expected to eat crow. That doesn't exist anymore. Like, that world is over. That whole face-to-face accountability thing is over. You're just an online internet name, and you can have every wrong opinion, but you can always be right in the long term, because you can always pretend that your position was we should have never sent arms to Ukraine. Look what they did with them. Look what ended up happening to those people. I always thought it was a bad idea from the jump. That's what happened to everybody with the Iraq War, the Afghanistan invasion. For some reason, like 70%, 75% of Americans supported those wars, but now you can't find one of them. They're all gone now. Maybe they all died and were replaced by rational people. It's like, no. There's just a whole gang load of people that were loud, especially online, because it's a play, like I said, infinite possibilities to make your opinion known, zero accountability. Like, nobody that knows you're not going to get the reputation of somebody that is wrong all the time, because everybody's doing it, and I've seen it too many times to have any other position. And it'll be just exactly the same with this. Exactly. It's already happening. Like, the worm is already turning in America against, there's way less support. Like, way more people are willing to say, and we need a diplomatic solution. Like, I'd be open to Ukraine giving a little and Russia taking a little, and if that ends it. And that's a huge departure from, public sentiment at the beginning of this. And you can see the trajectory. 3-4 years from now, it'll be uniform. It's just the way it is. Just the way it be. I just prefer to be right from the jump. I prefer to be on the right side of history from the jump. The ghost of Kiev. Slava Ukraini, my dude. Yep, Paul is right, as usual. And yet I shall suffer the slings and arrows of my ideological foes. What are the goals of NATO, and what are the goals of Putin? In general, if you're gonna make it a very simplistic kind of amalgam of all of the goals, I would say NATO's goal is to contain Russia and to protect Western Europe and the Western alliance in general against Russian influence and expansion. And I would think that Russia's goal, very simplistically, is to expand its sphere of influence. So there you go. My understanding is that modern nuclear reactors are physically incapable of melting down. I don't know if that's true or not, but the problem with that is that there are different types of nuclear reactors that are being built all over the world. And there are many nuclear reactors that have already been built that are not slated for decommissioning, that don't have these fail safes and shit. That's a problem. But yeah, I don't know if that's entirely true. What of geothermal energy? I'm for us figuring it out, but the truth of the matter is that geothermal, like places that are geothermal hotspots, are some of the most delicate and beautiful biomes on our planet. And geothermal can be very destructive, like pretty much any kind of power, generation to that. And so I think it needs to be done responsibly in those areas. But yeah, no, I'm for it. I'm for any kind of energy, and furthermore, I'm for making it free and openly available to everybody as just a human right. You can't function in any way, shape, or form in modern society without electricity. Therefore, it shouldn't cost you anything to have it, any more than like breathing oxygen should cost you money. It's something you literally cannot subsist without. You can't be the least bit successful. You can't be the least bit self-sufficient in any kind of modern society without electricity. I feel like more and more an argument can be made for internet access as well, but certainly electricity. Yep, water. Water should be decommodified and all costs should be removed. You shouldn't even be allowed to sell water. Like, water should just be provided. It's not an option. Like, it's not an optional thing. So I can't imagine being defensive of the power company. Like, not only are they incredibly exploitative and greedy, but they're also dangerous. Like, a huge amount of California's wildfires are started by shoddy, piss poor upkeep on PG&E's fucking ancient grid. And the only reason that it's like that is because PG&E refuses to pay its CEOs a little less and invest some money in modernizing its grid. It would rather just keep running on a 1950s in some areas, especially up in these mountainous areas. You go up in the mountains in California, you'll see like teetering over, like old like the poles with the lines draped between them. You know what I mean? The old ancient like pine logs and stuff. Old like ceramic, what they call those distributors on them. Just like that shit was built in the fucking 40s in some cases. And those are the ones that cause fires because they fall over, they're rotten, they throw sparks a lot more than modern ones do. Yeah, it's crazy. It's insane. Like, how old some of this infrastructure is, and there's no excuse for it. Like PG&E, it like makes a fuck ton of money, and it would just rather, pay exorbitant sums to the top level management, and have exorbitant sums invested so that it makes money on its own, rather than investing back into making things safe. And they would rather pay millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in fines than do it. Like, if you took all the fines that PG&E has paid for starting fires because their infrastructure is shit, if you took all that money and just put it into the infrastructure, there'd probably be like 90% less fires. Like, it makes no sense. But there you go. Anything to avoid having to invest some of your own money back into your business. So yeah, that's a totally and it's totally predatory too. Like, the fact that, like, there's this variable price for electricity that they can jack up when demand gets high. It's like, what? Just when it gets cold, the price of fucking natural gas goes whoosh. You know what I mean? Because they want to just cash in on their big. It's just garbage. It's completely and utterly vampiric. Just parasite of a company. And the whole idea of commodifying electricity in the modern age is just parasitic in general. Like, you're arguing for there just being some kind of horrible malignant entity that oversees something when it should just be freely provided. Absolutely. The electrical grid and the internet infrastructure should have been, like, it should be today. If I could wave my wand and say Wingardium Leviosa and make it happen, I'd do it today. Nationalize both of those industries. Absolutely. Absolutely. And standardize and subsidize those industries. I'm not talking about people having to pay the government for it. That's you pay in your taxes. But that's communist talk. It's no more communist than saying that we should have unbroken interstate highways that crisscross the entire country. It's no more communist than the idea of having roads. And in fact, I would argue that in a lot of cases, electricity and connection to the internet is more important than access to nice roads, especially in the modern economy, as we transition from like an industrial economy to, we've completely transitioned almost to a service economy. Yeah, it's more important that you have electricity in your home and the ability to interact via the internet than it is to have perfect roads. Yeah, nobody's got problems with that, except for maybe a few libertarians. These, like, they're all taxation is theft kind of people. Oh yeah. That should be nationalized, and like, ground should be broken on it now. Like, the fact that it should be like a national source of shame that there's not currently a huge initiative by the federal government to fund intercontinental, or not intercontinental, continental railroad, like a high-speed rail system that is constantly being expanded and worked on until it's just a workable thing. The fact that that's not happening in this country should be a source of national shame. Like, we're 50, 60 years behind the curve on this. At least. So yeah, there's a number of things that, and all, like, a lot of those things would be, like, not just possible but probable, if not for our bloated military budget and our bloated subsidization of different corporate entities. If we took that money, or at least a good percentage of the money that goes to corporate subsidies and defense spending, if we took that and started and invested it, I bet it would pay for that fucking railroad. At least pay for the first stage of it that connects the East Coast to the West Coast. You could modernize every school in America and still have a bunch of money left over. No more dilapidated, shitty public schools. You could fully fund every goddamn school. This is not to harp on it or bring it back to that subject again, but this is another reason why I'm vehemently opposed to war, because I see every dollar that's spent on national defense. And when I say national defense, of course, that's a euphemism for aggressive foreign policy. Most of that defense budget is going into our overseas operations and shit. So, or to facilitate them. So, take some of that. Take 50% of that, and take 50% of the corporate subsidies that are happening. Make Google pay its taxes, basically. Make Alphabet pay its taxes. Make Meta pay its taxes. Make all of the oil companies pay their taxes. Close the loopholes. Shut down the corporate subsidies. Take all of that tax revenue and invest it in any number of things. Modernizing every school, cleaning up every rundown central part of the city, every rundown city center, revitalizing those markets, national healthcare system that's fully funded in perpetuity. These things are these are not like fantasy. These things exist. They exist in other countries. So America is 60 years behind the curve on taking taking care of its own people. With a baseline. Housing, yeah. You know what I mean? There needs, that's a whole different thing. There needs to be a whole change in real estate. And I gotta say, there needs to be a limitation of freedom when it comes to real estate. There is no way that it should be legal for a single millionaire entity to own 60 houses and then operate as a landlord like that. I'm sorry, no. There needs to be a limit on the amount of different properties that a person can own for speculative purposes. Period. No more rich people buying up a whole neighborhood and then renting it out to people in perpetuity. That just doesn't work. That's the one of the reasons why things are as shitty as they are. I don't know exactly what the limitation should be, but there should immediately be a limitation based on speculative properties. And there should absolutely be nationalized tenancy. There should be places where if you're at the bottom of the economic spectrum and you're trying to get on your feet, you don't have to live in your car. It may not be the nicest fucking place on earth, but it's not a total piece of shit. You can get an apartment for your family. You know what I mean? That's reasonable and clean and safe so that you can get yourself on your feet. That should absolutely exist. Once again, we're fucking 60 years behind the curve on that. What's the excuse? Defense. The defense budget, and I think even more impactfully, the subsidization of American corporate interest. Period. There are a lot of people that would laugh at this and say, oh, what a utopian view. I'm just describing Luxembourg. I'm just describing Switzerland. I'm just describing France. I'm just describing Great Britain and Germany. No, this is not Never Never Land. These are places that exist that have everything I'm talking about. Government subsidized and well maintained international rail, government health service, cradle to the grave, subsidization for housing to make sure that you don't end up on the street. Like these are not crazy ideas. Of course not. Dude, Section 8 houses are usually fucked up because the government spends, as little as possible on subsidizing it. No, it needs to be fully funded. If you give a person a house and really give them what they need to lift themselves out of poverty, they're not going to trash it. If you throw them in a tenement, why are they supposed to care about the shack you threw them in? See? Yeah, I just don't. And there's no way we get any of these things unless there's a complete reprioritization of how we spend our money. And a huge part of that is our involvement in international affairs. I'm not arguing for a completely isolationist United States, but I'm arguing for a massive cut in our funding of things like overseas bases that our military occupies, the subsidization of other countries' militaries, I think needs to be reined in. I think that these kind of like blank check contracts that are given to these big defense companies to in perpetuity crank this out or that, no, needs to go to an as needed basis, and all of them probably need to be renegotiated and looked at through the lens of what other countries are paying defense contractors. Because I can guarantee you, if you look at that, it's going to be the same in America like it is everywhere else. We're paying an absurd amount of money for pharmaceutical drugs here because we just refuse to put a cap on it. That's why people drive into Mexico and Canada to get their medication, because they can get it for $10 down there and it's $150 a month here. Like it's the same thing with defense contracts. When there's only like 5 or 6 big corporations that all have their own specialty bidding on a contract, you can ask for whatever the fuck you want. There's no competition. There's nobody to go like, I can make those jets for 3/4 that amount. Oh, okay, well, we can make it for half that. There's none of that. There's no cutting of costs, and it's just a complete cost overrun thing where they're actually like looking for things to spend money on last minute so they can justify their budget next year. Like they're wasting money so that they can continue to ask for more. They don't want to have to admit like, we don't need all this money. So they've got to spend it on frivolous bullshit. Like that's got to stop. That's got to stop. And you can't stop that and arm the Ukrainian armed forces as well. Like that's all part of it. That's a nice little fat check for them. That's how they make their money. Like that alone is an argument good enough for me as an American who's living in the crumbling, fucking hasn't been updated since 1960 or before infrastructure and rapidly fraying social compact. Yeah, I think we need some fucking triage right now. or I think shit's going to start getting real bad on the streets. So yeah, I'm sorry, like that alone, that's not even touching the moral argument of should we subsidize the Ukrainians' right to defend themselves, and how far should we go in punishing Russia for its imperialist aspirations and blah. That's not even getting into that. That's just going like, as an American citizen, why would I argue for anything else? If you lift the American people up and the standard of living in America up, we're the most powerful country, the most culturally radiative country in the world. By necessity, you elevate other people if Americans are elevated. So what would you like, what argument would you make against that? And that's not even really dipping your toe into the moral side of the argument. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. There's been a concerted effort over the last 60 years in America, and probably longer than that, to be honest with you, but it's really kicked into hyperdrive in the last 60 years in America to see how much can we squeeze working people? How much of their money can we take and gift it to our billionaire friends and not give them any kind of benefit back for it? How long can we charge them for health care but pay them less and make the health care cost more? Like, what's the breaking point? I think they've either reached it or they're about to really reach it. And the outcropping of that is obvious and not good for anybody. So I don't know what to tell you. Starting to doubt that there is a breaking point. No, you shouldn't. Like, from my perspective, just life experience wise, shit is way crazier now than it was when I was a kid. There were protests when I was a kid, sometimes violent. There were not the types of protests that we're seeing now. There were, separatist groups and neo-Nazi enclaves when I was a kid, but there was not like a giant attempt to fucking interrupt the democratic process and like a storming of national monuments. That shit didn't happen. Being Republican and Democrat wasn't like being left wing or right wing politically wasn't the first thing you cared about when it comes to a person. Like, just the level of divisiveness alone is illustrative of like a coming, I don't know what you want to call it, collapse. War in the street. So, I don't know. It's gonna be carnage. It's gonna be carnage, y'all. Hello, counselor. It's gonna be carnage. So yeah, it's one of those points that I'd be happy to make. Maybe not like a debate style thing, but I'd be happy to talk to somebody who's very pro. Like maybe Zonster would be a good choice for this. Maybe he'll see this and we can set something up where he and I meet to discuss the ins and out of being anti-war, like what that means to be an anti-war leftist, and then what are the limitations? Like how far should you go in that? Like, am I wrong for being pretty much an anti-war absolutist? Like, it would take the most ridiculously over-the-top scenario for me to support military intervention in another country. I'm not completely writing it off, but it's something that I think should almost never happen, and it happens 12 times a year, every year since I was fucking 20. So, is it wrong for me to have that position? I'd be willing to defend that, and I feel that it's, a position that I'm qualified to defend. I'm going to time you out. Don't be adding other people in the chat. This is not like a socializing place for you. It's fucking confusing in a show that's based around responding to chat messages and stuff, to see people having a totally like side conversation or whatever. Just don't do it. Yeah, in my opinion, if you are supportive of America's continued geopolitical warfare, whatever form it takes, whether it be arming Ukrainians, whether it be arming Venezuelans, whether it be arming, or subsidizing the government of Brazil, whether it be arming rebels in Africa, whether it be arming Israel, if you're not against that, then you're not anti-war. By necessity, you can't be, in my mind, at least by the definition that I've always gone by, you cannot be anti-war and be supportive of the positions I just mentioned. It makes no sense. That would be like saying, like, I'm a person that's utterly committed to fitness, but looking like me. Like, it just, on the face of it, it makes no sense. Fitness is a big part of my life. That's a lot of people that I think would call themselves anti-war. I don't mean to gatekeep, but like, there's gotta be some kind of thing, right? Like, you can't be a total warmonger and say that you're anti-war, can you? Like, is that absurdly pliable of a stance? I think that there's, you got to be able to apply some kind of definition to it. You got to hold somebody to some kind of standard. And I think not supporting constant military intervention is like step one. That's like level one to call yourself anti-war. No, I know. That's one of the things that is so incredibly, like, frustrating for me from my position, is that this is not some new idea. This is not some crazy Zoomer idea that just was kind of born out of the social media age. This used to be the standard labor leftist position. like opposing foreign war, opposing foreign intervention at the expense of our own people and at the expense of the people in those countries, you're against it. You know, that's just bare bones standard leftist position. And now it's like some kind of fringe thing because we've got this like there's this weird disconnect, man. And I'm not trying to paint all lefties like this or whatever, but like, you know, bread tube or whatever. There seems to be this like super like double life that's being led by a lot of the main personalities. It's like on one hand, I'm a super radical leftist. Like I'm a crazy radical leftist. But on the other hand, I'm middle of the road Democrat. And there's a lot of people, like they say that you can't have your cake and eat it too. There's a lot of people with cake that are eating it too right now. You know, to me, that's demonstrably like that's a completely cognitive dissonance in position. Like you know, pick one. You're a radical anarchist. You support NATO. Pick one. You're a radical leftist of any stripe. You always support the United States position in geopolitical affairs. You don't get both. You know what I mean? But nowadays you do. In a lot of communities. Like I said, I'm not trying to paint a whole generation, but in a lot of the online communities that I'm aware of in a tertiary way. I don't watch a lot of it, and I don't watch it often. But, you know, from what I've seen and from the positions that I've heard, there seems to be a lot of cognitive dissonance there. Like I've got a leftist position that has 14 different parts to the name. Like I'm a you know, a fucking I don't even know. It all gets crazy to me. I'm a social libertarian, anti-fascist, pro-labor anarchist, scumbag leftist. You know, but I also agree with Joe Biden on you know, policy when it comes to China, policy when it comes to Europe, policy when it comes to the Middle East. I always kind of find a way to support military action, especially if it's like under a ostensibly leftist president. And by leftist, I mean center-right corporatist, but that's what passes for a leftist. So I'm always, you know, kind of agreeing geopolitically and domestically with a center-right capitalist. But I'm also a radical, bra-burning, blue-haired, multiple piercing, they, them pronoun using anarchist. It's like, okay, well, you know, and in my mind, it's very obviously like choose one of these two things and apply it to you. But, you know, it's kind of astounding to me how much time these supposedly radical kind of leftist folks find themselves defending like standard corporate Democrats. It's a little crazy. Like, isn't that, like, aren't we supposed to be criticizing the left from the left? Isn't that part of our job as radical leftists? And make no bones about it, I don't have a ton of different preambles, but I would say that I very securely consider myself to be a radical leftist. I'm for the abolition of all currency. I'm for the establishment of a totally profitless society where the abundance that this planet offers up is used to the benefit of all, including the sustainable nature of that planet. And I think that that's completely and utterly possible. I don't think that that's a utopian vision at all. I think that if all of the work that goes into privatizing and monetizing every aspect of our lives went into preserving the environment and increasing the, you know, quality of life of every human being on this planet. The abolition of all capitalistic exploitation, the abolition of all necessary war, if such a thing exists, the abolition of borders, the unification of the human species into what we are, brothers and sisters that are all sharing one shockingly fragile little bastion in a dark fucking outer ring of, you know, the Milky Way galaxy. And that we're probably alone for as many fucking millions of miles that we can, is especially when it comes to like sentience. And that we better take care of one another. Like, I think that's, you know what I mean? You can call me a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And that's been my political position since I was fucking knee-high to a grasshopper. And that's about as radical as they come. I'm for the abolition of democracy as a concept, at least modern democracy. Maybe the concept of democracy lives on in some way in the future, but the way it's currently set up as a crony capitalist pass-through, that's over. International conflict is necessarily over because there's nothing to fight over. You know, there's no longer like, this is our oil, this is your oil, and we're charging you this much labor, this much monetized labor for our oil. No, there's just like, oh, you need some oil? Sure. Just make sure you share back some wheat. You know? Humanity and cooperation could accomplish an insane amount. Insane. Like over the top insane. So there's my political position. That's where I'm arguing from. Maybe that helps some of the people that seem to be so at odds with my position on certain issues, whether it be voting blue no matter who, or dumping weapons on the Ukraine. I think that any institution that stands in the way of that, even if it's the quote-unquote lesser of two evils among two completely and utterly complicit corporate parties, I think that I have to stand opposed to it in order to even come close to fulfilling the necessary defensive, you know, the necessary defense of my own position as I claim it to be. I have to stand in opposition to the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party of today is the Republican Party of my childhood. And whether or not they're a little bit better on this issue or that issue is way less important than whether or not they're standing directly in the way of saving this planet from being absolutely drowned and destroyed and sucked dry by capitalism and greed. So it's vampiric. Like our current dominant culture and the government that oversees it, and that in that umbrella, I by necessity include giant corporations and just business in general. The oligarchs. It's like our environment, the livability and arability of our land, the livability of our cities, the breathability of our air, the drinkability of our water. There's not a single human necessity that isn't being directly threatened by this. How do I stand and be counted with a bunch of people who are dedicated to the continuation of that, if I believe it to be happening? Like, what does that make me? That doesn't, in my opinion, make me a person that believes in the abolition of all fucking national borders, the abolition of money as a concept, the transition of the human species to a unified group of people who work together to preserve the only planet that we know that we can inhabit. You know, if I'm gonna stand and be counted with the Democrats, then I'm not that. I'm not that. Because in order for me to even make an argument like that, I would have to be like, well, it's because we're pushing it closer to that ideal. No, we're not. No, we're not. When it comes to financial exploitation, the Democrats are right there in lockstep. When it comes to war, look what happened. The Progressive Caucus tries to send a letter to Biden, a sternly worded letter, saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't be giving arms to Ukraine. Maybe we should seek a diplomatic solution. They have to pull it back 3 hours later because it's so wildly out of wing with the Democratic Party. There's no hope within that sphere of any of the stuff that I'm talking about getting better. Thanks, Charlie. And so why would I support its continued existence? How does that serve any of the things I believe in? Why would I cheerlead for it? Why would I campaign for any one person? Why would I play the pretend lesser of two evils game while business just remains usual? We need a radical reorganization of society. And we need it now. We need it like 50 years ago, because that's when everybody else got it. And that doesn't include the Democrats. I'm sorry, they're not the party of that. And anybody that wants to make the argument that they are is by necessity ridiculous in my mind. Like, there's no long-term trajectory that you can point at when it comes to the Democrats that shows that they're moving at all in that direction. And if you think you can, you're a deluded liberal who thinks that they're a radical. Sorry, but not sorry. Also, genuinely not sorry, because I think it's a stupid position to have and maintain. You think it's unethical for me to vote Democrat? No, I just don't think it means anything like what you think it means. I don't think it's ethical or unethical to vote for anybody you want to vote for, because I don't think that your vote matters one lick. When it comes to the actual existential problems that we face as a species that we've been talking about here, the rot of our public infrastructure, the rot of our monetary structure, the rise of the robber barons, the utter gutting of labor unions, you just name it. You just name it. The Democrats are not against that. The Democrats are presiding over it. So, you go into the booth hoping to vote for a Democrat over a Republican, and the absolute political truth, and nobody with a fucking baseline knowledge of politics in America would deny this. You're voting for a center-right Republican if you go back in time to 1980. If you go to 1975 and you look at what a Democrat was and what a Republican was, the Democratic Party of today is basically the Republican Party of 1975. And guess what? The Republicans at that time were still the fucking corporate greed, anti-civil liberties, pro-corporate fucking bullshit mongers, pro-war war hawks that they are now. So you tell me what you're accomplishing for voting for that. If you have a hard time like coming up with an answer, the answer is nothing. This entire debate about the efficacy of voting has gone on for years and has only sucked a bunch of it. I agree. I think that the best thing that we could do is to admit that voting is a childish distraction at best, and that if you want to participate in it, you should do it at your own leisure, but you shouldn't spend a fucking single moment talking about it or defending it or thinking about it until it's time to do it again. I think if we can all agree that that's where voting is, especially considering that there's no way to certify that what the voting numbers that come out of these fucking counties are actually real. Like, I'm not trying to be like a Donald Trump level conspiracy theorist, but there's been like documented cases where they've caught people fudging these fucking voting machines that are in every county. They found like voter rolls being switched out and shit. This has happened. You can look it up. And that's just the times that they were caught. So you think, so either you believe that there's 100% enforcement when it comes to fudging these machines, or there's 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 examples of it happening every time there's a big national election. So come on. Knowing that, and knowing that your only real option is to vote for the center-right corporatist party, defend spending one breath and one iota of your power or money on any kind of electoral cycle or election. I'll wait. But don't dance around the facts. Don't act like there's a system of voting that has the integrity to make sure that your vote is actually counted, because there's not. There's not. There's an indeterminate amount of mistake and malfeasance going on in the American electoral system. The only question is how much and how widespread is it. But the idea that your vote is just counted as a one-to-one vote, you know that that's not true. That's demonstrably false. The Electoral College alone makes that demonstrably false. Like, that completely subverts the vote of what, like 80% of America? Come on. So it's not that, you know. And the Democrats are not some radical leftist party. They do war just like the Republicans do. They spend money and they subsidize corporations just like the Republicans do. They somehow have an excuse every time to fail to get any meaningful leftist shit past the theoretical stage. It's always just, didn't have the votes. They always manage to do what corporate America would want anyway. And then they take a bunch of money from those corporations too, which, you know, if the Democrats were the party that were against the corporate domination of America, you would think that there would be no reason for them to send money to these people, right? Like, I would really, if I was in a corporate, I would only send money to these people if I was expecting payback in terms of legislative leeway when that person gets elected. I don't know. So if that's the case, the Democratic Party is almost wholly and utterly subsidized by American corporations, and their opinions on the things that matter to you, that matter to your wallet and to your life and to your continued existence, are filtered through the opinion of what Raytheon thinks should be done, of what ExxonMobil thinks should be done, of what, Meta and Twitter and Alphabet thinks should be done. what Hormel chili thinks should be done. You know what I mean? They ask Hormel chili before they ask you. There are plenty of places that are run by Republicans right now where weed is already legal. Like, weed is now recreationally legal in Louisiana. Weed is like, or it's on the way to be recreationally legal in Louisiana. I mean, the whole South is starting to turn. So what's your excuse for that? If the Republicans are the party of standing completely in the way of legalizing marijuana, why have so many Republican administrations done it? I'll wait. Yep, Virginia, North Carolina, Arkansas. Been like a rash of various steps of legalization all throughout the South. I think there are now more southern states that have some access to legal weed than don't. There you go. No, I get it federally, but I'm just asking from whence comes this idea that Republicans are standing in the way of fucking weed legislation on the whole? When there are so many state level, like there are more legal states than illegal states in the country now. They profit from it, yes. That's what they were that's what the Democrats were holding on for. The infrastructure to make massive amounts of profit. And now that that's there, you think the Republicans are in the way of it? No. Like I said, I would be shocked if Biden doesn't pull off federal descheduling of marijuana and a Republican president does it. Like, I would not, that would not shock me. I think it would be like a completely smart move on their part. It would be a way for them to pretty noiselessly make a bunch of money, have another sin tax for every, federal agency, and get a lot of goodwill from disaffected leftists. I think it would be a totally smart strategic thing to do, which is why I think that it's totally possible that they do it. Like I said, there's a ton of Republican governors that have signed off on legal weed. Tons of Republican state legislatures that have signed off on some form of legalization of weed. A lot of those places before that, weed was super criminalized. Oh, cool. Somebody sent off firecrackers in the fucking middle of the night. That's nice. They do it just based on the financial aspect, yeah. Yeah, that was the war, dude. Yeah, that was pretty loud. Duck and cover. Imagine getting nuked while streaming. That would be awesome. I was just talking shit and all of a sudden a big mushroom cloud behind me. Like, all of a sudden, I just turn into a big skeleton in front of you. You're just like, holy fuck. Paul just got nuked. And you look out your window and there's a big mushroom cloud right near you too, and you're like, oh no. That's nightmare fuel. It'd be pretty cool, wouldn't it, though? Just, I'm just like, what the fuck? Holy shit. I gotta go. Shit goes out, and you're just like, what the fuck happened? Like going, looking at the news sites and shit. Reports of a giant blast in the Central Valley of California last night. This is a developing story. We're not sure what happened there. We're not sure the extent of the damage. To be frank, we just can't. The military will not let any media planes through. They say it's unsafe. And so nobody knows the extent of the damage. And oh, hold on. This just coming in on the wire. There has been another explosion of some type, this time on the island of Manhattan. Once again, the extent of this is not, it's not fully been confirmed, but it has been confirmed on the wire that there has been yet another explosion in New York City. Once again, we're not sure what's happening here, but it's becoming very apparent that these are not accidents. That I think as these, hold on, Washington D.C. Another explosion in Washington, D.C. Now, the status of the American government that was in session there this afternoon is unknown. It is unknown whether they were moved to a safe place, but we have been told that there has been a devastating explosion of some kind. One would hope that, our worst nightmares are not confirmed here, but this is starting to seem very much, ladies and gentlemen, like we may be experiencing the most awful of eventualities, a nuclear strike. Now, at this point, we are not reporting that these strikes are nuclear, but as these pile up, as there are more now, there are more of these reports of explosions coming in from Cincinnati, Walla Walla, Washington, Austin, Texas has gone dark, according to this. So yes, this is starting to look more and more like, and people are starting to evacuate around me, ladies and gentlemen, and I think I may need to as well. There are sirens. Just like, oh my God, dude. Goes to like the test pattern or whatever. You're just like watching like, don't make me coom. Yeah, it cuts to an old like 80s tape of like the flag salute and taps being played or whatever. You're just like, what? Then this is not a test. This is the emergency broadcast system. All residents of Yakima County, Seattle County, Tacoma County, Walla Walla County are advised to take shelter immediately. This is not a drill. Paul, if we have prior warning, do you promise to stream yourself getting nuked? I don't know, dude. I don't know what I'll do. There's a chance maybe I do pop on the stream, broadcast the apocalypse. Duck and cover. I'd like to see a movie that's made in the style. There's a movie called Pontypool. You probably haven't seen it. But it's a movie that's really cool because it takes place in this like little small town radio station, and the whole movie is told from the perspective of people that are working at a little small town radio station as the world ends, basically. And in this one, it's like a zombie apocalypse scenario. I would like to see like a nuclear scenario that's just like that. It's like in the style of Pontypool. It's just like a little local radio station in Nowheresville, Wyoming, or something, a city of like 1,400 people, tiny little broadcast station or whatever, trying to make heads or tails of what's happening as every major city gets nuked. That would be pretty dope. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for chilling. We'll see you next time. Bye.